want to introduce you to a couple of trees that go by the common name hornbeam. And in fact, there are two that do really well here in Oklahoma and are in fact Oklahoma proven plants. Now the first one is the American hornbeam, which is Carpinus caroliniana. And it's actually a slow growing, shorter tree. So it's only going to get about 20 to 35 feet tall and often has more of a globular form to it. Now behind me we have the European hornbeam, which is known as Carpinus betulus, and in fact it gets a little bit taller, about 40 to 60 feet tall, and you can see it has a bit more of a pyramidal form to it. It does not require any pruning if you don't want to prune it. However, it can actually handle a fair bit of pruning because over in Europe they often will prune these trees down into smaller shrubs and create dense hedges that way. One of the things about the hornbeam that they're most noted for is their bark. You can see if you look at the texture that's on the trunks of the trees, they have kind of this muscly wood, and that's actually another common name for them, is muscle wood. You might remember a few years ago when we were on campus looking at columnar trees, there is a cultivar of this European hornbeam that is known as fastigiatus. And that is actually a columnar form, and so it's going to be very tight and narrow and upright, which is a nice addition to add in some of those smaller areas to kind of cover up larger, taller buildings as we have done here on campus. Now, if these three trees still don't fit in your landscape, I've got one more option for you to add hornbeam into your garden. If you've ever visited the Botanic Garden here at OSU, you probably have walked along this main path that cuts through the garden. And on the east side of this path, we often like to plant a lot of different perennials. Now, you might remember that we used to plant a pennisetum called First Night that was a very dark ornamental grass that would get to be about 4 to 5 feet tall and just create a nice division between the pathway and this garden behind us here. Well, about 4 years ago, we got kind of tired of planting that annual every year, and so we looked at another option. And today I want to talk about this other hornbeam that we have here. This is a dwarf columnar hornbeam. So it is a European hornbeam. However, you can see that it is a cultivar that's going to stay relatively small and compact. Unlike the columnar hornbeams that we have seen on campus, this one is going to remain at about a 10-foot height. Now, when we planted these about 4 years ago, they were only about 18 to 24 inches tall. So you can see they've more than quadrupled in that time period since we initially planted them. As most of them are about 6 feet in height now, we do have some variability in the 16 that we have planted here on the east side. Now, these dwarf hornbeams are actually hardy from zones 5 to 8. So here in Oklahoma, we're in that ideal range. They're going to remain about 2 to 3 feet in width, and the nice thing about these is they do not require any pruning at all. In fact, we have not done anything. Because they have this dense, compact habit, however, they actually serve as a nice shelter for birds and other wildlife that might seek some shelter in there. Now you can see they have a really kind of rough, heavily veined leaf, and they're also going to have some yellow fall foliage. So they're very low maintenance, tough plant, and a perfect addition for that small backyard garden in order to sort of kind of create a screen. Now you can see ours are planted about on 5-foot centers, so we're gonna have a little bit of space between them, but they kind of create these column effect as you walk down this walkway here. So regardless of whether you have a lot of room or not much room at all, there's likely a hornbeam that you can add into your landscape.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.